Welcome back to the Lift Lounge podcast, episode 13. We're going to do something very different for the first time ever. We are going to, well, not we, I'm going to interview Keaton on his recent
shenanigans.
Stuff, into running and all of the weird things that he gets up to. So
don't get too excited, guys. I know you're all buzzing to hear this.
Yeah.
For the record, I have got no idea what Leon's going to be asking me, so I'm going to completely roll with the punches here, and you're getting completely truthful, off-the-cuff answers.
Just going to shit on him all 30 minutes of this and tell him he's doing the wrong things.
I'm absolutely sweating for this now,
So, first off, we're going to start off with the fact that, for those that don't know, I'm pretty sure I'm getting this right, but Keaton has been doing bodybuilding style training, or at least was, for a good 7 years before he made a little switch to introduce more running into his plan and start to dial back his training. Now, my understanding of why you did it was because you're a natty bodybuilder, and realistically, to gain any more progress in terms of, you know, your physique or your strength, it'll just require you looking like a mess and doing a year, 2 year long gaining phases, which just isn't really, it's not fun or worthwhile when you're gaining half a kilo in 2 years, you know, especially as a natty bodybuilder. But obviously you get to look better year round, you get to feel better about yourself, and you don't have to stress too much about not making these progresses in your lifts because of X, Y, Z. But have I got that right?
Yeah, pretty much hit the nail on the head. The whole reason it was introduced was, well, one, because I do genuinely love it. Like, I actually do really love going for runs now. But the main reason was, like you said, natty lifter, and for the past couple of years I'd been going through pretty intense and long gaining phases, so basically spending a good half of the year with more body fat than what I would like, to then diet down and not see like a great deal of change. There's obviously some change there, and I am improving how I look kind of year on year, but that rate of progress was not worth me not looking and feeling my best for like half of the year, essentially. So now we're going for more of an approach where I'm doing something that I enjoy, which allows me to also stay a bit leaner year round. I mean, it's not the sole reason. That's definitely not me saying if you start running you're going to be you're going to be lean year round. Like, I could definitely still be putting on weight right now. But yeah, just a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more enjoyment, and not going through these like crazy bulks to not look a hell of a lot different.
And obviously, you know, I can understand why you made the switch, but there has to have been something that inspired you to make that switch, because if you were doing something for like 7 years, you would have been a wee bit set in your ways in terms of like, this is what I do, this is what I've always done, and this is what I will continue to do. But surely there was something that you've seen, or something that maybe opened your eyes a wee bit more. Now, obviously, I'm sure you're aware of the CrossFit space and things like that, where there's more of a hybrid style of training, gets shit on a lot, but they do look a whole lot better than us most of the time. So what would you say like influenced you or maybe inspired you to make that switch into just switching up your training and incorporating more running?
Honestly, like, the main driver at the start was to try and show people that to like consistently run, you don't have to be quote unquote like lean or like skinnier. I don't want to say the word skinny. I don't really feel like that comfortable saying that word. But like, when you look at really, really good runners, they are very lean. They've not got a lot of muscle. That's probably the best way to say that. So part of me is like, do you know what? Let's just introduce running. I love it. And let's also try and reflect and show some of the journey that, you know, you can still be relatively big. Like, I'm not saying I'm like big by any, like, that's not me coming on here being like, oh, I've got loads of muscle. But compared to the average person, I am probably a decent bit bigger than the average person. And kind of just wanted to show the journey of like, you can still look as though you lift, and you can still look visually very good in terms of like the amount of muscle mass specifically that you're holding, and still be semi-decent or run consistently. Because I think a lot of people think that in order to be like really good at one or the other, like, it's going to come to the detriment of the other one that you're not doing. So to be like a really good runner, you're probably not going to be able to have that much muscle mass, or to be, you know, growing a lot of muscle, you probably can't introduce a lot of running, because they don't kind of go hand in hand. And just trying to show that you actually can do both.
Okay. And what about like in terms of that initial starting period, was motivation high, or were you like slightly put off by the fact that maybe those first few runs were absolutely awful, or maybe for me, it's hard to understand, because you would have had to give up on some aspects, or at least understand in the initial phase that there was going to be like a getting used to it phase, or getting some actual performance from your runs? Because I can't imagine the first few runs were great. Now, for those that don't know, Keaton's always been really fit in terms of running. I mean, even before you started running consistently, you were still doing runs here and there. Because I remember you would do a run randomly and do like a 5K, whereas if I just did a random 5K, it wouldn't be a 5K. It'd be 800 meters. So,
So I think for the first couple runs, when I started getting into it pretty consistently this year, was when I'd started my fat loss phase. So I'd been doing some lists and things like that anyway, and it wasn't as though I was going from like no movement to running. I'd had a decent list goal, I'd had a relatively decent step goal, and then I started to introduce some runs from there. I also wasn't at my like peak heaviest either, so I'd lost a little bit of body weight and a decent bit of body fat. So getting into it, the first couple runs compared to now, I mean, like looking back, they were probably pretty horrendous, but in terms of what I was aiming for back then, just really easy runs and just spending some time on my feet. So I wasn't getting to the end of them and thinking, that was horrendous. It was like, it felt okay just because it was easy runs. Like I wasn't aiming for any sort of goal. I was like, let's just do a little bit more running across the week and let's just take it really easy as I go through the start of my fat loss phase. That was kind of the thought process.
And was the transition quite easy? Because I know with running, like endurance just builds tremendously fast, like in terms of even your performance of how fast you can run over a set piece of time or distance. It does build relatively quicker than building muscle. Like it takes so much longer to build muscle in my opinion. Obviously I'm maybe not got the best opinion on that, but in my opinion it is easier to see those quick wins even faster than newbie gains you'd get in the gym.
Yeah, so it's kind of similar to anything else. I think your rate of gain at the start is going to be like pretty tremendous. As you push it, there's probably, I don't know if there's any like really, really good runners listening to this, but I imagine once you start getting into the territory of like maybe like 14, 15, 16 minute 5Ks and things like that, you're probably going to be training really, really hard to try and scrape a couple of seconds off that.
Yeah.
So then you could probably relate that maybe to the stage that I got to at the end of the lifting career of, I was going through these really, really long bulks for 6, 7, 8 months of the year, cutting back down and seeing like very marginal progress. So you could probably link them and relate them. But yeah, definitely at the start, like it was pretty tough at the beginning. Like I did feel pretty fatigued after them, even after the easy runs. But because I was only focusing on doing easy sort of zone 2 runs, I was never ever going out and like killing myself. So the recovery from them was generally okay. Like I say generally okay, I was still pretty sore and I was still pretty fatigued because it's something that I hadn't really done super consistently before, but it by no means like blew me away and then like couldn't perform across the gym. I think that's why I really sort of fell in love with doing both, because I was still going and doing my runs and I was still in the gym and I was still feeling good and maintaining progress and stuff through the dieting phase. So one or the other wasn't actually negatively impacting the other mode of training.
Have you had any kickback from like clients or stuff like that are maybe a bit more hardcore bodybuilding or things like that, or maybe even friends that, like, what are you doing that for?
I've not had any kickback at all, actually. I'd say it's actually the opposite. I've had a lot of clients coming to me saying that they would like to start running more, but they always thought that it would negatively impact putting on muscle and things like that.
What do you think about that stereotype about how if you start running that you'll just lose your muscle? Same with like doing cardio.
I think it's just like an equation of if you can make sure you're in a calorie surplus, you can make sure that you're progressively overloading your training, and you can make sure that you're recovering. If you have runs in the mix and you're still hitting all those 3 things, like why would you not still be able to put on muscle? Like if you're giving yourself all the tools in order to grow muscle, and there's no reason why you shouldn't. Now, if one of those things maybe starts to slip, then okay, you're maybe doing too much or you're not giving yourself what you need in order to grow. But if you can make sure calorie surplus is there, you're progressively overloading your training and you're recovering, if that means you're doing those, then you have 3 runs across the week as well, like why would you not be growing muscle?
Would you say it only starts to come into play on the extreme ends of a goal, where either you want to be as big as possible or you want to be the best runner as possible, that it would then start to become a detrimental factor?
Yeah, if you have like a huge running goal and you also want to be
massive,
as big as you possibly can, then you're probably not going to be able to make that happen. I think that's why I've made the transition fairly successfully, because I'm not hooked on being as big as I possibly can anymore. So like I've kind of detached from that goal of like more size.
Yeah.
Like I'm not thinking about that anymore. If you were in the mindset of I want to be bigger, and then you were still going to push for like a quick marathon, it'd be like, right, okay, like you're going to give one up at least for a certain period of time.
And what about like for most people who train or do bodybuilding in any sense, there's always an essence of body dysmorphia where you do feel like you need to be bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. And that is something that I would imagine that you probably experienced yourself at some stage. But how's that transition been to actually I don't need to get any bigger? Or has it been a bit more of like a healthier transition mentally to think like actually I just need to be fitter?
Yeah, it's been a pretty healthy transition. Like I definitely don't feel as though like I need to be putting on loads of muscle anymore. Like with that being said, like would I still like to see my physique progress slightly? Like of course I would. Who wouldn't? But it's very much like the whole sort of balancing act, and what I get that sense of fulfillment in now is like, can I maintain this physique that I've built and worked really hard to build, and still progress my runs and do that consistently and show people that like I'm not going to have to sacrifice my physique and sacrifice the amount of muscle that I have in order to push for these runs and get better at running. In my head, that is now kind of taken over what would have previously been aesthetic goals and pushing for more size. That's kind of what I get my sense of fulfillment from now.
And with running at the minute then, so how long have you been running? Since, I feel like it's been since like April last year, or is it not? Is it not? It's later than that, wasn't it? You did your cut at the start of this year. So what, since the start of this year?
Yeah, I'd say I've been running consistently. So at least 2 runs a week since either February or March.
Okay. Could you give us an insight then into how your training's had to change to adapt to your new running goals?
So,
and maybe some insight into what your goals are with running.
Yeah. So start of the year is very much just a couple runs across the week. Still train exactly how I trained for like bodybuilding. So still 5 training sessions across the week, and we kind of just sprinkled in like 2 or 3 runs. It was just really whenever I felt like it and whenever I wanted to get out. As we progressed through the year, closer to the photo shoot, then the runs did take a bit of a back seat because the main goal was to look as good as I possibly could for the photo shoot. So I think there was maybe 2 weeks leading up to the photo shoot where I didn't run at all, just because I was trying to drop as much inflammation and fatigue and everything like that I could. And then pretty much like straight after the photo shoot was finished, the running was back in. So it's very like a moderate amount of running, maybe 2 or 3 runs, very easy all the way up to the photo shoot. They got dropped off right around the photo shoot time, so within that 2-week period. And after the photo shoot, I was like, right, okay, now I don't really need to watch out for like inflammation and fatigue as much, so I can actually introduce more runs. And then since then, it's been round about 4 sessions a week in the gym with 3 to 4 runs, and then leading up to the half marathon, it was pretty much the exact opposite. So we dropped down to 3 sessions across the week, and then it was up at like 4, definitely 4, sometimes like 5 runs across that weekly period. So yeah, pretty much just done like a big flip on its head, pretty much. And then now the half marathon's ticked off. It's kind of like a healthy balance. It's 4 to 5 sessions across the week and 4 runs across the week as well.
And with your change in split and stuff like that, then how much has like came away from your training? Because obviously I would imagine that now that there's been more of a shift in almost like your energy balance towards running as opposed to trying to gain size, how much strength and stuff has had to pull back in order for you to achieve more and more and more in running?
So like strength specifically, I've not viewed that with I've had to pull that back. Like I still go into my sessions and try and lift as much weight as I possibly can and get like as strong as I possibly can. But I've been strategic in like redesigning my split, because if I had the same split from what I previously had, then I would have had all the same previous numbers that I had from like pure bodybuilding. And then I know we spoke about this before the podcast, that probably would have played more into like a mental detriment for myself. Not feeling
like you're progressing?
Not feeling like I'm progressing, because I would have been so hyper focused on where I used to be. So a purposeful redesign of split to go in with some new movements and almost start back at like day one.
Did you have that in mind when you made your split? Because that seems like one of the, like now that I think about it, it seems like one of the best things you could possibly do if you're redesigning your split, knowing that the numbers may not be the same as they were before.
Yeah, it was purposeful across, I would say, like 75% of the programming, because I still have movements in there that I was doing beforehand, but they're maybe programmed in at different times, different order, things like that. So then therefore I'm still making that mental disconnect. So instead of going in and hitting my incline dumbbell bench press on my second exercise and knowing that, you know, when I was bulking, I was shifting like 55 kilos or whatever it might be, maybe my incline dumbbell bench is like fourth exercise in now. So I don't even think about what I was doing beforehand. Like, don't get me wrong, I say I don't think. There's still times where I'm like, I was shifting, you know, a good bit more on that. But it's much more of a mental disconnect from like where I was beforehand, and it's more so like, okay, where am I now with this new style of training, and was that better than last week? Yes or no? Not like, was that better than last year?
Yeah. So moving a bit more into then how much you've improved. So like, give us an insight then what your first run kind of looked like compared to what your runs are like now. If there's any that are like truly comparable.
Truly comparable. So I think it was about 2 years ago now, not 2 years ago, actually, that's a lie. I think it was about a year and a half ago now, where I done like my first 5K, getting back into running, and I logged 26 minutes and like 40 seconds or something like that. And that was me like pretty much first 5K. I remember the first couple of runs I done, I didn't even aim for 5K. I was like, let's just go and do 3K and that's it.
Let's just run.
Yeah. And the first 5K that I logged and like took a photo of was 26 minutes. And then fastest 5K now was like a good 6 months ago, to be fair, but that was 19 minutes and 9 seconds, I think. And then a post I done recently actually was kind of comparing like that first 5K to the 3 mile splits. So a 5K is about 3.1 miles. I think it's like 3.11 miles or something. So for the half marathon, pretty much those 3 mile splits were like just over 20 minutes. So I held basically 3 miles, basically consecutive 5Ks at 20 minutes up until 21K, compared to like my first 5K being 26 minutes.
And see, from like, obviously since you made this transition, all of your coaching, all of the things that you've done in the online space have all been bodybuilding centric and posting useful information and trying to gain clients in the bodybuilding space. Have you felt any kinds of like imposter syndrome since you've started running and had to transition what you post and do things that maybe people look at you and didn't think that's what you were, compared to people who've always done running content and stuff like that?
That's a good question, to be fair. I'll give you props for that one. Not that the other ones haven't been good, but that was a good one, because it's something I've been thinking about recently. So part of me has been thinking, you know, there's probably like elite level runners maybe that might come across one or two of my videos and think, you know, who's this guy think he is? But at the same time,
would have got that shit with bodybuilding. Yeah,
at the same time, I would have got that with bodybuilding, but I'm not trying to be just the bodybuilder anymore or just the runner anymore. So when I do ever think like that and think, you know, there's probably elite level runners out there that might be looking down on some form of content, it's not to appeal to just runners, my content. And, you know, kind of my approach to training now, it's to appeal to the people that want to go down a similar path to me, that do really actually enjoy a bodybuilding style of training, but also maybe want to run. So it's not just for bodybuilders or just for runners, it's people that are trying to do a little bit of both. And I've been trying to stay away from the whole hybrid thing, because I don't want to be like, you know, hybrid athlete, because in my head I like quickly go to high rocks.
Yeah.
Which is not kind of what I'm doing.
I don't feel like, I mean, there isn't really a bracket that you could put yourself into just yet, because you're not doing high rocks or CrossFit type things or even ultras. So obviously it is a hybrid style of training, but it's not like the traditional hybrid style. Like a lot of what people would say the traditional hybrid style is like doing CrossFit or doing high rocks and maybe doing some kind of lifting, whereas yours is, and sounds like it's still like 60% bodybuilding, or maybe even 50-50 now, 50% bodybuilding, 50% running. But it doesn't seem like what most people would attribute to like a hybrid style of training.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I'm saying there. Like, my training will maybe be like right now, just after the half marathon, it's very much like 50-50. I get equal enjoyment out of both. But I'm like more than happy to, if I was pushing towards a running goal, maybe go 70-30, or if I was pushing towards a photo shoot, go 70-30 in favour of bodybuilding. Like, I have absolutely no issue doing that. It's not about that sort of typical CrossFit high rocks where like I'm just trying to do everything all the time and I'm constantly trying to keep it 50-50. It's like, you know, if I want to go and do a photo shoot, I'll do a photo shoot and I'll sacrifice a little bit of my running. If I want to go and do a marathon, I'll do a marathon and I'll sacrifice a little bit of my bodybuilding. It's really just trying to do both.
So tell me this. Obviously, the last podcast we filmed, the one that has been posted, I believe, was just before you were doing your marathon. So half marathon. And you had said that you didn't really want to put anything up about it or do anything like that. Was that linked to maybe feeling like that's not something that people want? Or were you like worried at all that maybe people would look at that and go like, oh, what's he doing now? Or were you worried about times and stuff? Like, if you had a really bad time, do you think you would have posted it? Or is this just like a case of, is it an ego thing or is it an imposter thing?
I think if I got a time I wasn't happy with, I probably wouldn't have posted it. And that's, I think I said that in the previous podcast, but that's why I didn't want to shout and be like, I'm going for this time, I'm going for that time.
Yeah.
Because
is that a fear of failure though?
Yeah, like I genuinely didn't think, I genuinely didn't know whether that time that I was going for was going to be achievable on the day. Like, I think I knew at some point that goal would be like somewhat achievable. But then again, it was like, it was the first one I'd done. It was the first like event. I didn't know what was going to happen on the day. Like, I didn't know what the weather and stuff like that was going to be like. I think like deep down, I knew that I could probably run that time at some point in the near future. But I wasn't like 100% certain. I wasn't like, you know, like I don't want to say I'm going for this certain time and then like not hit it. But I wouldn't necessarily say it was imposter syndrome. It wasn't because I was like, oh, I don't want people to know that I'm like running this race. People might not
think I should be doing this.
Or people, yeah, like I don't think that came into it at all, really. Especially on the day, like I was super blown away with like one, just how many people were there doing it, and like how well organized and like the atmosphere and how like everyone was on such a buzz, and it was like such a good day. And that's the first time I'd like been part of like a kind of sport.
So actually what I want to get into next, which is the fact that like in the bodybuilding space, you haven't competed, and I wouldn't even say competing is comparable or really competition. Like I obviously haven't competed, so maybe I can't answer that, but I feel like the competition aspect of bodybuilding is very, very different to the competitive aspect of running. And the whole community sphere isn't the same in bodybuilding as it is in running, because if there is, of course, like an atmosphere in the gym or like a shared camaraderie between people who go to the gym, but in running, it's so different. I feel like there's more of a community aspect, more of an atmosphere that is a bit more welcoming, and also that competitive aspect is a bit more tangible, because in bodybuilding, it always comes down to genetics, even if both people are doing everything perfect and genetics and whatever else they're taking. Whereas with running, it truly is like a competitive aspect. So for you doing that half marathon, how did it feel to actually be running against other people? Now, maybe you weren't trying to win it, obviously, but the fact that you're up against other people and there's other people that you can gauge yourself next to when you're pacing. So what did that feel like?
Okay, so I'll touch on what you said there, because I agree with some of it. So I think the competing side of bodybuilding, like getting on stage, and the competing side of running, it can be done for like both the same reasons as one another, if that makes sense, right? So the way that I'm trying to explain it is like, some people will get on stage to win. Some people will get on stage to look better than they previously did last time. Some people will enter a marathon to win, and some people will enter a marathon to PB their previous time. So they're not doing it to win, they're doing it to better than what they were last time. So that's the same scenario.
But I feel like on that, with a half marathon or a marathon or any kind of running event, the majority of people aren't trying to win.
Yeah, the majority.
Whereas in bodybuilding, people are doing it more than likely to win.
Mostly to win, but then you see people all the time on social media being like, it's not about where I come, it's about looking better. Yeah,
but they're only saying that because they didn't win. Whereas in running, no one's expecting you to win because you're not from Kenya. So, you know?
True. But then what I agree with is the gym side of things. So bodybuilding, you compete solo up on the stage. You know, there's obviously guys on the stage with you, right? But it kind of links into what I was saying there. Like, you get on stage to showcase like your physique and maybe look better than what you did last time. But the training side of bodybuilding is typically done solo in the gym, you can have a training partner, right? But your training partner can't literally do your set for you. Like the work that you're putting in is more so solo. You're in the gym. It's quite daunting. I think the running side of things, like, don't get me wrong, most of your runs you'll probably do by yourself as well. But I think there is much more of a community there, because you could go and, if you wanted to, you could go and get like 50 of your mates and you could all go for a run if you want, right? It's not really like you could go and grab 50 of your mates and physically you
could not do a session though. It'd be the worst session ever.
Yeah, you're not all going to be able to do the same session in a timely manner, time efficient manner, and all get the same sort of buzz from that. You'd be in there for like 4 days.
Yeah.
Whereas you could all go for a run, all start at the same time, all finish at the same time if you wanted to. So I agree with like that sort of thing. I think there's much more of like a community around there. But I think when you look at it from like a competing standpoint, I think it's quite similar with like some people will do it just to better themselves, and then some people will do it to win. I think that goes for running and bodybuilding.
But did it feel different when you were doing the run, or doing something for the first time in a long time that was actually like everyone's at a start line and there is an end line that everyone can reach for?
Yeah, definitely. Because so I realised I kind of skipped over your question there. Sorry.
I kind of asked too. So,
but yeah, so there's a start and a finish line on the day, and everyone's starting at the same start line and everyone's starting at the same finish line. Whereas, you know, with the gym and with bodybuilding specifically, it's like you could go into the gym and someone could be dieting and bulking,
and someone could have been in there 10 years and you've been in there 2 years. So
yeah, it's so different, and it felt really good to get up to an event that was just a specific event and start with everyone on the start line, and not finish everyone on the finish line, but everyone's finishing at the same place. And then you have that sort of like buzz after. Everyone's finished at one place. Everyone's just done the same thing as you. Like no one's went out and cheated the system or anything like that.
And I think more importantly as well, it's healthier. Like I feel like whether or not you do maybe an ultra, you could say it's not as healthy. But I mean, when you're talking half marathon, I obviously don't know how difficult it is, but so many people do it, and I would say it's not a detrimental impact on your health. Like I feel like it is a really rewarding and massive achievement that you can do, and it's not going to be the same as dieting down for a show where you're on death's door, you know. Yeah. And you may look the best you've ever looked, but you feel the worst that you've ever felt. Whereas when you do your half marathon or a full marathon, that you feel probably the fittest physically that you've ever been.
Yeah, definitely like a different sense of fulfillment. Because you've worked maybe just as hard for a run and doing a half marathon than maybe as you have like through a dieting phase. Like I wouldn't necessarily say like, you know, one style of training is harder than the other. But yeah, like you said, if you're going to like do a show or a photo shoot or something like that, you literally feel your worst when you look your best. Whereas you cross the finish line on a run and you feel great, and you've also done something really hard. So it's not the same.
Yeah. So I've got like 2 more, and then we can have a little closing point. But
okay,
the next one I wanted to ask was, I think this is the most important question really, which is how much better do you feel doing this compared to what you were at last year?
Way better, way healthier, like fitter, probably just wee things like just being able to do certain tasks and not be like breaking a sweat, like not carrying as much body weight all the time as well. And then like in terms of like mental health as well, like looking in the mirror and, you know, like I said, I've been a little bit more flexible with my food and stuff like that, and I'm still in a relatively lean spot compared to like looking in the mirror and think, yeah, I really don't like the way I look, but I'm just going to have to suck it up for another 6 months.
See on that now, in bodybuilding, you're always either gaining weight or always either losing weight. Whereas what you're doing now, I would imagine you're likely holding or roughly the same. And you're not having to change your mindset in terms of I need to gain, or I need to lose. Whereas you are being able to be consistently one thing, which is completely different. Yeah. So surely that has helped like massively in terms of mentally, just knowing that I still look good. It's
a double-edged sword, because like I still like the way that I look in the mirror better, but then it also comes with like what direction am I going in? Which then like I need to focus on the running and be like, right, okay, I'm maintaining the look and I'm improving here. That's the goal. But then there's no like...
Well, they are opposites, because bodybuilding is purely physique driven, whereas running is not physique driven. You're not chasing a look for your running. It does not matter. It's performance based. Obviously, you will need to look you will look better if you are higher in performance, but it's just because you have a more defined six pack isn't going to make you a better runner.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. So it's a good and a bad thing, I think, because kind of lacking some sense of direction just with your physique. Like if you're cutting, you're like, I'm getting leaner, and I know I'm going to be getting leaner. If you're bulking, you're like, I'm getting bigger and I'm getting stronger, and that's going up. When you're just kind of sitting around the middle, it's like sometimes you find yourself asking like, well, what am I doing? Like I'm not getting leaner. Maybe I'm getting a little bit stronger, but I'm not trying to put more muscle on. So I think the running part of it being there, like super, super important. If I was to just try and maintain and then like not have any output in terms of progression, physically, like performance wise, and I was just sitting in a maintenance block, it'd very much be like, well, what am I actually doing? I'm not pushing towards anything. But because I have that outlet of running now where I can be like, okay, I'm pushing towards that goal, that's what's made it way, way easier.
And I think this is a good point to end on, which will be what's next? What's the next goal? Because you just said there that, doesn't feel like you're sometimes moving towards something, but obviously now you've done a half marathon. I take it the next one is obviously going to be a marathon or something longer.
Yeah, this year has been big for goal setting, and I think it's kind of highlighted to me just how important it is, because obviously towards the start of the year we had the photo shoot, so that was the first goal, and we had a goal to push towards, and then
Man's had a busy year.
Then we had the half marathon, so we had that goal to push towards, and after half marathon, like I found myself literally like the day later being like, what's the next goal? Because I don't want to sit here in this period of like, I don't know what's going on. So looking at marathon next year, which will either be April or May, the reason I'm giving myself quite a long period of time there is the same reason for the half. So I didn't want to do the half marathon just to say I ran 13.1 miles, because I know I could run 13.1 miles. Man wants
a good time.
I wanted a decent time.
Sub 3, is that what you're chasing?
I don't know if that's a wee bit unrealistic, sub 3 for the first one. I think anything under like 3.5 hours for the first one, I'd be like really pretty chuffed with. But I'm purposely giving myself that really long road so that I can slowly realize what the actual potential is. So if we're going for like 3.5, let's say as I get closer, I might start to think, do you know what, like maybe let's go for like a sub 3:20 or something. That's maybe a little bit more realistic. So giving myself plenty of time to improve as much as I possibly can before going into that. And then I'm really intrigued by doing like longer distances, doing some ultras and stuff like that. That actually excites me more than like just a marathon. Is doing like an ultra marathon, but
where it's not just a challenge of physical, it's mental. Like it'll be a much bigger mental barrier to achieve.
Yeah, I want to push.
And there's nothing comparable to like an ultra in bodybuilding. There's nothing like, I don't think there's anything that's comparable to doing something that is so damaging physically that would affect you so much mentally, because everything in your body would be telling you to stop. Whereas when you train legs or something, it's like 45 minutes that you may have to push through some barriers, but like pushing through it for a whole 24 hours.
Like I'm sure towards the end of the marathon and during the marathon I'll be having some pretty dark thoughts and thinking like,
well, it's a journey. I mean, half marathon, and then we can jump that up to 100.
I'm sure I'll be thinking that, but I just want to like scratch the itch of, I don't think I've really ever been in like a really, really dark place like physically, and I want to go into the pain cave and see what that feels like, and I feel like I need to push myself there.
See if we can stay in there.
I'm sure I'll experience that in the marathon, no doubt.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap up there. The last thing I wanted to say was, personally, obviously I wasn't going to say I was going to say this, but I'm really proud of you for what you've done. I personally admire what you've achieved in such a short space of time, and also there's just so many aspects of bodybuilding that would push you away from doing something like this, and I feel like it's so refreshing to see you do it, and it's made me want to do aspects of it, although I know it's just not for me, it's not my goal, and I don't think I'd enjoy it as much as you, but I get so much solace from seeing you do it and see you improve week on week and be happier, because I was training with you when you were in that peak bulk, and I knew how upset you were with it, and you had a lot of conversations about how, I'm natty and it's just never going to be, I'm never going to get crazy big. I'm never going to have a huge amount of progress in a year. And now I feel like you've got so much runway for feeling better for yourself, and so many goals that you can now tick off that were not there before. And maybe in the natural bodybuilding space, there was things you could have done, but now with this, there's just so many doors that you can go and open and almost sharpen that sword and become a better person and become more well-rounded and have more things about you that make you different. So
thanks, man. No worries. Really, really nice to hear. I appreciate that a lot. Honestly, I didn't know that was coming as well. For anyone listening, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Right. See you in the next one.
See you in the next one. Cheers. Like, rate, share with your pals, all that good stuff. Thanking you.